Remember me?
After practicing law, Raymond Berg fought crime.
You have the right to an attorney.
As a hard-boiled detective on wheels.
Ain't it the truth?
His name is Ironside.
Perhaps you wouldn't mind saying it again.
His name is Ironside.
All right, now you've said it.
Nothing slows him down.
I want to see this one firsthand.
Now on MeTV Fresno, Xfinity 187.
Well, what are we waiting for?
Hi, I'm John Mallis, and welcome to this live edition of Connect with Me on the showroom floor at Ventura TV on this Thursday morning. A special guest today. We're talking about coal mine disasters, and one in particular that happened just over 100 years ago in the state of New Mexico. Your phone calls, 436-MeTV option 11. Remember, my friends, do not wade through the message, and also turn down the sound on your TV set if you choose to call in. It is option 11. Back with more in just a moment.
Tonight I want to discuss the importance of the television medium to the American people.
And welcome back to the program here. It is Ask an Expert Day on Connect with Me on MeTV Fresno. Before we get into the subject today at hand, I want to expand on my monologue just a little bit and comment about the World Series last night and the Boston Red Sox winning their third World Championship, of course, in the last 10 years. You got to put this whole thing in perspective, my friends. This has nothing to do with the Red Sox versus the Cardinals. This is the Red Sox versus those hated Yankees. I almost said something else. Anyway, the Yankees, of course, have won 27 World Championships. The Red Sox have won, what, 8 now? It has always been about the Red Sox and the Yankees, so now the Red Sox can raise that big red flag about Fenway Park and say, see, New York, we did it again. Where are you? At the bottom of the heap. That's what it's all about. It's the same thing with the Giants and Dodgers. It's the Yankees versus the Red Sox. The Red Sox versus the Yankees had nothing to do with the St. Louis Cardinals last night. So congratulations to your Boston Red Sox for winning their third World Championship, and the first time they celebrated on their home field at Fenway since 1918 when the Bambino was playing for the Red Sox. Anyway, our subject at hand today is a little more of a serious topic, and it concerns coal mine disasters. Now, if you look at the stats and look all over the internet says that China is the biggest producer of coal right now. And who's number 2? That would be us, the United States of America. The U.S. is second, just shy of about 600 coal mine plants around the nation. We go to the full screen. You can see right there, China number 1, about 600 active coal plants. 37% of the U.S. electricity, I guess, comes from coal from what they're saying on the internet. But of course, that number is changing each and every day. The use of coal, of course, is going down. As we go to the videotape, a long time ago, more than 100 years ago, the second worst mining disaster occurred in the state of New Mexico. Some 263 miners died, only 23 survived. It all happened October 22nd, 1913 in the small town of Dawson. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a gigantic explosion shattered the second mine, mine number 2, and as the rescue crews arrived on the scene, they saw smoke, they saw fire, they saw a lot of dead bodies. Most of the victims in this case were immigrants. They were Italians, they were Greeks, they were Mexicans, they were Americans. Dawson is no longer there. It is long gone. Nothing there but a cemetery that was named a National Historical Site back in 1992. And about every other year, there is a get-together to honor those who lost their lives on that tragic day a little more than 100 years ago. Live at our studio right now is Robert Sexton, who is, well, his grandfather died in that disaster 100 years ago. He is an expert in the subject of Dawson and coal mines and what happened on that fateful day. Your phone calls are important. 436-MeTV option 11. Remember to turn down the sound on your television set if you choose to call in on this day. Ask an Expert Day with our friend Robert Sexton. Back in just a moment.
When you're looking for Whirlpool innovation and quality, who has the answers, the selection, the price? Ventura TV Appliance. With billions in nationwide appliance buying power, more than Home Depot and Best Buy combined, we'll help you save. Our low prices on Energy Star qualified Whirlpool appliances save you energy and money and pay no interest on select models when paid in full within 12 months. Ventura TV Appliance, serving you since 1951.
Use of coal has often been a very controversial topic, of course, around the nation. Of course, the health hazards, I think the risks involved, the dangers to get to coal. A lot of people are in favor of it, but now with solar and wind and natural gas, a lot of the coal mines are closing, and the use of coal, I think, is drastically going downhill, but it's changing each and every day. Robert Sexton is here to talk about a coal mine disaster that happened many moons ago, and your grandfather was involved, and sadly, he died in that coal mine.
Along with 262 other men.
Yeah.
That was a major accident. It is still on record as the second largest mining accident in U.S. history. Now, there were others larger. I believe there was one in France, and I'm not sure of the date. Over 1,000 miners died in that one. So,
yeah,
on the scale of things,
wasn't there a second explosion in Dawson quite a few years later?
There was in 1923, February 1923. Another 120 miners died in mine number 1. Dawson was a complex of about 10 coal mines. Started mining in 1897, I think it was soon sold to Phelps Dodge, which their major business was copper, so they had copper smelters they had to supply. Dawson coal is bituminous. It's good for coking. Coking is a process where coal is reduced to essentially to its carbon content, much like making charcoal.
And that's part of the danger, right?
It adds to the process that has to be made. When you see pictures of Dawson, one of the prominent features are the coke ovens, which probably almost a half mile long of coke ovens where this process was going on. So that was the reason they bought it. It was an unusual town, apparently.
Well, before I get into the disaster, I want to talk about Dawson a little bit because it was named after a person.
Charles Barkley Dawson.
Right. Not the Charles Barkley we know, but Charles Barkley Dawson. Okay.
No. He had bought the land sometime prior to 1897, was aware of the fact that there was coal there, was using it for personal fuel purposes,
and
selling some of it to his neighbors.
The hills there, right?
Yes, that's when he started it as a commercial coal mine operation rather than just selling it to neighbors. Then a town was established. At first, from all accounts, it was rather rough town, typical mining camp. But when Phelps Dodge took it over, they turned it into actually a major cultural center. They had opera house, they had gymnasiums, swimming pools, schools, churches, hospital, a mercantile store that supplied their every need. By all accounts, it was a very interesting town.
Yeah, and going along quite well until October the 22nd, 1913. When your grandfather was in the mine with the others. What caused the explosion? Do we know at this point, after all these years?
They never pinned it down to exactly who, but the accident reports finally stated that apparently a miner had set a charge, eager, I think, to get a little more coal to shovel because they were paid it was piecework. Ran a wire from the trolley wires for the trains that carried the coal out of the mine to set it off, and probably overcharged it. That blast blew out a lot of the coal dust, and the coal dust ignited throughout the mine and it just blew it apart almost
Yeah.
instantly.
Once that coal dust gets in the air or gets anywhere, it that's what it does.
It is.
It explodes.
It's much like explosions in
bomb.
a flour mill.
Yeah.
That danger was not really recognized at the time. The first inclination was to think it was methane gas in the mine. That is a constant danger with coal.
Is that what they thought at first?
Yes, yes. Was the initial idea, but there had been testing in the weeks prior, and the methane content was very, very low. So they knew that it couldn't have been the methane that exploded. They had suspicions about coal dust, and when they finally put it all together, they decided that had to have been the reason.
Yeah. I want to put up on the screen kind of a rolling shot of all the mine disasters that happened during a certain time period in the early 20th century, and we'll look at that. Let's take that full screen if we can so we can see it. It all happened, of course, in 1900, all the way through 1928 or 29. You had 10 major disasters, including the one in Dawson in New Mexico that took 263, and there you see Dawson right there. And so, you know, it was a major issue back then.
Well, not only did these disasters take the lives of some 2,200 men, but in that period of time, the average death rate in mining was about 1,000 a year, if you can imagine. So these are just the tip of the iceberg.
More disasters back then than there are now. Why?
Safety practices, one by one. When you do something like that, one by one, you find out what it takes to be able to do it safely. If you look at current accident reports, they're nothing like this. They don't have the major explosions, unless there's a cave-in or something of that sort. They're isolated single accidents. A tractor overturns, somebody gets hit by a falling rock, that sort of thing. But there's still a lot of accidents, and to this day, it is a hazardous business to be in.
When did you find out that your grandfather was a victim?
Oh, I have known this since I was a child. I went there with my parents and my grandmother probably in 1947 while the town was still active, and I have just the vaguest memories of it.
When did the town shut down?
1950, April 1950.
Okay.
But it also must be understood, as you noted, coal mining is declining, but it was declining even then. The peak for Dawson was, say, by 1920. There was large demand for coal during World War I, and then after that it declined. The Depression came along, knocked it down even further. By the time they closed the town, there were only 80 miners working, and there was only one shaft in operation.
Right, but then the use of coal kind of exploded after the Depression and then went down again.
Yeah.
So across the country, I mean, not specifically in New Mexico.
But even so, especially out west, the railroads did not use coal. They had turned to oil a long time ago. Southern Pacific actually was a big customer, but they began dieselization along with the other railroads, and the use of coal just collapsed.
Yeah, it certainly did. Bob Sexton is here. His name is actually Robert Sexton. He is an expert on this Dawson disaster, this coal mine disaster that happened more than 100 years ago in Dawson, New Mexico. His grandfather died in this blast. We'll come back after the break and talk to him about why this subject is so important and near and dear to him, other than the fact his grandfather, of course, died in the disaster. Your phone calls, 436 MeTV, option 11. Turn down the sound on your TV set if you call in. Back with more.
1 Adam 12, 1 Adam 12.
This is Adam 12. It stars Martin Milner as Officer Pete Malloy, Kent McCord as Officer Jim Reed.
1 Adam 12, roger.
This black and white patrol car has an overhead valve V8 engine. It develops 325 horsepower at 4,800 RPMs. It accelerates from 0 to 60 in 7 seconds. It has a top speed of 120 miles an hour. The automobile has 2 shotgun racks, one attached to the bottom portion of the front seat, one in the vehicle trunk.
You want me to drive?
Now on MeTV Fresno, Xfinity 187.
We've got a phone call coming out of the break here. Good morning. You're on Connect with Me. Your question for Robert Sexton. Hello.
Hi. I have a question. Is mining more of a grandfather, father, son type thing? I mean, I've never, other than watching this, I've never really heard or met anybody that's been in mining.
Okay, I'm not sure I understand the question. Oh, is mining a father-son type thing?
Yes, unfortunately, that tends to happen. It ran in families. It's interesting to note that a number of the men who died in 1923 were the sons of men who had died in 1913.
Interesting. So, a little bit about your grandfather, and he was obviously a miner. Did your father go into the mining business?
No, he did not.
Okay.
My father had never been around it. My grandfather came from New Hampshire. There was a prominent family there.
You must be happy the Red Sox won. Huh? You're kind of a New England guy there, a little bit. Got some roots
John,
back there.
I'm a Yankee fan, but that was my father's fault.
Those damn Yankees.
Those damn Yankees. Oh, yes. But that's another story.
Yeah, we have limited time here.
Yeah.
Hey, let's take another call here real quick
Okay.
before we pick up with that point. Good morning. You're on with Robert Sexton, and your question quickly.
Pretty interesting subject. Dawson, New Mexico. I guess his town's not there anymore. Where was the town in New Mexico? That's one question. My second question was, they talk about testing for poisonous gas in enclosed mines with live birds. Is that something that they used in Dawson? And will birds react to radon as well as methane? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I was thinking about that too, about whether or not they test for poisonous gas and how they do that specifically.
Well, the idea of using birds, I think, is long since gone. I've never encountered anything to suggest
Is that a
they
fairy
use
tale
that.
or?
Probably not, but you'd have to go back
centuries.
Probably a couple of centuries before you'll find that. Phelps Dodge was pretty safety-minded, so they used as many modern methods as they could.
Yeah.
They had a lot of safety equipment. They just had not suppressed the coal dust as much as they needed to.
Yeah. Well, your grandfather, you were going to pick up on that story there.
My grandfather, as I said, came from a prosperous family in New England. His name was Lloyd Peter Upton. The Uptons were well known in New Hampshire. My great-grandfather had been the youngest speaker of the New Hampshire legislature. But fortunes kind of changed, I think partly because of the Panic of 1896. My grandfather was going to college at Brown. There was an accident in the chem lab. He breathed what I'm told was phosgene gas. So because it was a respiratory problem, the solution in those days was to go out west to Arizona, New Mexico, where the air was clear and pure.
And he did, but he
Yes.
stayed in coal mining.
Well, no, he wasn't in coal mining then.
Oh, okay.
He didn't get into it until he was there,
I
which
see.
is ironic because if he went out there for his respiratory problems, so he goes to work in the mine, and if the disaster hadn't
Yeah.
killed him, the black lung probably would have.
Good morning. You're on Connect with Me. What's your question?
Good morning, John, and to Robert, your guest. Just several questions. The barbecue broquettes we use, this is the first question. What is the difference between those and the coals that are found in the caves or the tunnels? That's the first one. The second one is, do they still make furnaces for new homes for coals, I guess, in other states? And is that still legal for that to happen? And what percent of homes are still using coal furnaces for heating? And do you recommend it?
Okay.
These are several.
Thank you. Hey, thanks for the
you,
call.
Robert.
I appreciate it. Have a good day. What's the difference between the coals in your barbecue and the coals in the mine?
Well, the coal in the barbecue is a byproduct, is really a wood product.
Oh,
but the
okay.
process is similar. You heat the material in an oxygen-free environment. That drives out all the volatiles, the water vapor, and so on and so forth. Leaves you with something that is almost pure carbon.
Coal furnaces?
Coal
Still in
furnaces, I doubt it.
Yeah,
because
I wouldn't think so.
coal delivery was one of the major things the railroads did, and that has pretty much all vanished. Coal is still used in power plants,
Right.
obviously, but
So your
but not
grandfather
home.
getting back to him, your grandfather, his name again?
Lloyd Peter Upton.
Lloyd Peter Upton. And how old was he when he died?
Just short of 30.
How many kids?
Well, that was
Obviously
just
your
it.
father.
My mother. No, my mother.
Okay, your mother.
He was on my mother's side.
On your mother's side, okay.
And she was born 2 months later, January 4th, 1914. So she never knew her father.
Okay. All right. And so when he got to New Mexico, he initially didn't get into the coal mine business. He got there, and then all of a sudden later on, he got into it.
Yeah, they homestead. The whole family came out. Eventually, they homesteaded south of Dawson, around in an area near Roy, New Mexico. Very flat, desolate, interesting country. And I guess he went to work in the mines to help support that because it was a pretty hard scrabble existence.
Okay, talking to Robert Sexton about the Dawson disaster in 1913, coal mine that blew up, mine number 2. We have some video to show on the other side of the break and plenty of photos that Bob brought back with him from Dawson, a recent trip. You'll see the photos in just a moment.
Frigidaire. We introduced the first home freezer, the first pulsator agitator washer. And now we introduce the Frigidaire Orbit Clean dishwasher, designed with a unique wash arm that gives you 4 times more water coverage for a consistently better clean. Frigidaire, over 90 years of legendary innovation.
See the full line of Frigidaire appliances at Ventura TV Electronics and Appliances.
Robert Sexton is our guest. He's I should say formally an electrical engineer for Pelco. Right?
Pelco. It was the last job.
Yeah, right. Okay, quickly, Dawson is located how far from, say, Taos, New Mexico? We all know Taos, New Mexico. Not many people know Dawson.
Santa Fe. It's about 150 miles northeast of Santa Fe.
Okay.
So
it's hard to get to? Got to take some back roads?
No, it is not hard to get to. It is about 15 miles off of Highway 25. I-25, which major interstate there.
Okay. Well, actually, you're looking at a still photo as to on the way to Dawson. This is a photo on the way to Dawson, I would imagine, right, Bob?
Yes, it is. It gives you an idea of what the countryside is like around there.
Okay. All right. Now, I want to set this video up by talking about a memorial that happens every other year in Dawson to commemorate the victims who lost their lives there, 263. You were there just when? Last week?
I was there last weekend, yes.
Okay.
There are 2 things that happen. First off, because of the nature of the town, people come back to Dawson for a Dawson reunion.
Even though the town's not there.
There's nothing there. I mean,
except the cemetery.
Yeah, you find a few little foundations and the cemetery.
Right.
They're allowed to go on the property because it's privately held now. Every 2 years at Labor Day, so there are 500-600 people show up for this reunion.
And one of those reunions happened last week. You were there. Let's roll the videotape. We've got sound.
But all this came to a sudden halt on October 22nd, 1913, when 263 miners perished in a massive explosion.
And whereas 10 years later, another 120 coal miners in Dawson, New Mexico lost their lives on February 8, 1923. Now therefore, I, Susana Martinez, Governor of the State of New Mexico, do hereby proclaim October 22nd, 2013 as Dawson Remembrance Day throughout the state of New Mexico.
Now
that was the Greek Orthodox priest?
That was the Greek Orthodox priest. We had both Catholic and Orthodox priests there to memorialize the miners who had died there. This is over and above the biennial reunion
Right.
The reunion occurs on Labor Day every 2 years.
Now, there were several nationalities there that people that lost their lives. You had Italians, you had Greeks, you had Mexicans, you had naturalized Americans, but you had a lot of immigrants.
They were about. I have the list of names for the 1913 disaster. In that, about 80% of them are immigrants. There were about roughly 40 Americans, 40 Mexicans, 40 Greeks, 130 Italians. An interesting factoid about it, because of those Italians, 80 of them came from one small town in Italy. If you can imagine how that devastated that town.
Okay. We have a bunch of still photos. I have no idea what order they're in, and frankly, I don't care. We've already seen that one, so move on to the next one. What are we looking at here, Bob?
That is the Dawson town site as it exists today. There's, as I say, there's nothing left of the town, but there was a town of several thousand people situated on that spot.
Right there on that spot? Really?
Yes.
Okay, and this?
Now that is part of a retaining wall that was part of the whole complex of coke ovens. That's probably the most prominent piece you can find outside of the cemetery itself.
And that piece was there in 1913, right? During the disaster, or?
Well, no. This is the remains of the wall. Yes,
photo,
yes,
yeah.
yes. No, this is the remains, I think, of the high school. That block with the 1920 on it still exists, and they moved it. It's sitting at the cemetery, at the gates to the cemetery now.
Okay, and the American flag, of course, over the cemetery?
Over the cemetery, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the cemetery is to the right of that picture. This sign gives you an idea of how diverse the miners' population was, because you've got English, Spanish, looks like Russian, Greek, Italian. I don't know all of them.
Yeah. Any more photos? Are we out of photos? That's it? Okay, that's it.
Okay.
Why is this topic so important? I know your grandfather died, and that's very near and dear to your heart. Why is it important to the rest of us? Why should it be?
There are two things that I think are of particular interest and thus importance. One is the migrant issue, the immigrant issue. The second, of course, is the problems and dangers of mining, especially coal mining.
Even today?
Even today. It is a difficult and dangerous business.
So this is relevant for today's population. It is a dangerous business.
It just goes along with the idea that you really can't build a better future if you don't understand the past. And those accidents, keeping those accidents in mind, are a reminder that they can happen. Most of the time when we hear about a disaster like this, our first inclination is to think, well, it was corporate irresponsibility. But in this case, it wasn't. And that's what makes it especially interesting and important. Even though Phelps Dodge tried, they were not able to prevent these accidents from happening.
I don't want to run out of time before you get a chance to show your books. Real quick, we have 30 seconds. Can you do that in 30 seconds, Bob?
This one. This is the book on
Dawson.
On Dawson.
Okay.
It's called
Coal Town.
Coal Town, Life and Times of Dawson, New Mexico. It's by Toby Smith. It's out of print, but it's become very
we got 15
collectible.
seconds now.
And the other three are memoirs from my mother's cousin, and this is where I drew a lot of background material, both about my grandfather and his family, but also about Dawson as well.
Okay, where can you get the Coal Town book?
Coal Town book you can find on eBay, but it is getting a bit expensive.
All right, Robert Sexton, thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much,
insightful.
John.
I enjoyed the topic today. Good show. Thanks for the photos and the video that you brought back.
My pleasure.
All right, Robert Sexton, our guest today here on Connect with Me. We're back for another edition of this program tomorrow on MeTV Fresno. We're going to talk about the Fresno Bully Rescue and much more. Thanks for being with us. Have a great day.
Want to create something extraordinary? Create perfection. Our lifestyle appliances make it easy. KitchenAid, Ventura TV appliance, and you, when only the best will do.
All right, from the beginning. This is the city, Los Angeles, California. My name's Friday. I carry a badge. Police officers.
Now on Xfinity 187.